What up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Nerd Gen Report. I am your host, Pablo, and joining me, as always, is Mr. Brian Schultz. Star Wars. We want to get into a discussion about the future of this IP because
that is whack.
We've spoken about it in the past about where the IP needs to head, where it needs to attempt to reach back again. And
this is not it. This is not it.
I prompted perplexity to understand if what they invested when they bought Lucasfilms for $4 billion, has it been worth it? It has been, but the future looks bleak as far as what can they put their money on to get back to the success that Star Wars was known for and the interest people had. So this Mandalorian, I didn't see it. Brian saw it. Nobody could really get me to go see it. Why? Because I heard the same thing from everybody who's seen it on long episodes of the Mandalorian and Grogu. This is opposite of what we're talking about as far as TV series going to film. And we're going to get perhaps into a little discussion about what the difference is in terms of what it looks like for it to be successful and compare it to this and the downfalls and the things that just didn't really clearly get anyone enthusiastic about its future prospects. Brian, when did you see it? How was the crowd? What did you leave with after seeing this film?
We saw it as a family opening day. Theater was probably half full. No real enthusiasm. I'd say like a decent amount of kids, but they weren't like making noise. My kid really liked it. I think that's who the movie's for. I think your son would probably really like it.
Okay.
I fell asleep for 10 minutes, which probably tells you a little something about fatigue. That's fatigue, literally on display.
Yeah.
And I walked out with kind of like a feeling of that was, even despite napping for a little bit, was sort of passively entertaining, instantly forgettable, and wasn't going to leave any impact whatsoever. And I will say it's interesting, over the course of the weekend, I have to say, like, I actually think those sentiments are less about this particular movie itself and much more about the state of the IP, how the IP is being used, and this fundamental problem that honestly is now embedded in all the major IPs that we have. So I actually think on its own merit, this is a flawed movie, but it's not a bad one.
Okay.
The things that make it tough are not its fault.
Are not
its fault. Are not the fault. They're not the fault of the actual like movie itself. It's the stuff around it drags it down to a place where I think you can kind of feel bored or empty. But I think for the kids who don't suffer from that like analysis level the way we would, I think there's this joy and this escapism and this cuteness and adorability that works. And you could argue in some ways that is actually very Star Wars, because George has always said Star Wars is for the kids, right? That's his number one credo. So, it's one of those things where it's like, I have kind of very mixed emotions about it, but honestly, a few days later, I'm kind of like, that movie wasn't that bad. The thing that's really bothering me is the other stuff around it. And I feel more regret about the movie than sort of like, wow, they stole my money.
Got it. I mean, kids drive a lot of the success of these, kid films. If kids want to see it, your parents are going to do anything to quiet you down or to satisfy you for an hour and a half. So they can make that trade-off later. Hey, I took you to the movies. I need some time.
I'm keeping it real. Like them again, they keep it real. That's real.
What were some of those things surrounding it that you felt didn't work
Well, I don't think I'm alone in this, but I think for whatever reason, this particular project and my experience watching it, it just it was like a crossing the Rubicon moment for me when it comes to streaming. I think this movie is ruined is a strong word. I think this movie is severely hampered by the existence of the TV show. I really believe that.
Like, all right. Let me throw this at you.
Okay.
What if this was a series and the one that we got, the one with the Luke Skywalker in there with that whole thing, what if that was on screen?
Nah, doesn't change my view.
Really?
Okay. To me, this would have been better if this was the very first time you had seen these two characters ever. Then, to me, it's still flawed. There's still issues. Like there would definitely be like kind of questions you would have that hadn't been filled in. But to me, then there are scenes in this movie that are still magic. The magic was erased by the fact that if you have watched the TV show for 3 seasons, which admittedly were 3 seasons of diminishing returns, you have seen everything already. That's why people say, well, this is just an extension of the TV show. Like there embedded in that statement is a bias that basically says there's no magic because I've already seen it. And that's why I'm kind of like, okay, I've officially arrived and I'm happy to debate and get into this. I'm out on streaming as a use for these IPs. Done. Like I'm changing my view on almost all of these situations. I think there's a way you can do it, but it's not how it's being done. And honestly, it's not realistically how any streamer owner is ever going to handle these IPs. But I think this movie would have been a very creditable Star Wars movie with a legacy if the show had never existed. It's the show that's the problem, not the movie.
Yeah, I mean, but this is why I say, like, when was that Luke Skywalker episode of that? Was it season 3 or season 2?
2. Last episode of season 2.
I just think that seeing Luke Skywalker, that scene of him having that, it wasn't a one shot, but it was, it was the same scene of Vader when he first came on the screen, when he boarded that ship, right? That was his version of it. I think if we would have, because there was more talk of the Force. There was that I think it was in season 2 where he was sort of protecting Grogu while he was connected with the Force. I just think that would have worked better because yes, there is a way to do it that it would work because we've talked about it on the show, Brian, about how some of these stories can then translate into perhaps not necessarily a movie, but a situation that connects to a bigger universe.
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, for everyone, it's going to be different. There's people going to listen to me and be like, yo, I felt that way for 5 years. And that's fine. Everyone gets there on their own time, I guess. But I don't think it changes my point. I think it misses the point to say, if I had put this character or this scene into this movie, then it would have made me feel different. It's like, no, the issue is a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away used to feel special. It used to feel special and exclusive every time you got to go. And every time you got to go up until Force Awakens, and I do want to talk about that because I think that's one of the 3 things that ruined this. You got to go to a place you never went to before. It didn't mean you had a perfect experience, right? Like look at the prequels. There's some horrible stuff in there. But because you had to wait so long to get there, there was still this sense of magic of like, I'm being taken somewhere I can't access unless I go to this particular movie in this particular venue. Yeah. And this movie doesn't have any of that because the TV show has already happened. So when you watch like Mandalorian with his single shot, his intro, I don't mind spoiling this, his intro in the film is the single shot cam fight scene that we saw way back when in the Asia trailer. I'm just saying, imagine that was the first time you ever saw this character with you had no backstory. He shows up like Batman in the shadows, and then he starts shooting his way through all these guys. That's a scene, man. That would have been a scene that you would rewatch, you would remember, you would think about. But because you've seen him do that 30 times over the course of 3 seasons plus half a season of Book of Boba Fett, it just feels like another one of his scenes. That's what I'm talking about. Like, there is a sequence with Grogu in this movie, which is probably the best scene in the movie, if I'm being honest. My kid's favorite scene is the best scene. It is Grogu on his own doing stuff without Mando.
Okay.
If you had never seen Grogu before, and the last time you saw a character physically look like this was Yoda on his deathbed, I'm telling you, those 15 minutes would have been special. You would have been like, there's this baby version of Yoda with a sense of humor who is like foraging around the planet, using the Force, but like imperfectly, making mistakes and fending for himself. You would have been like, I just want to know that character's cute and I want to know more about him. But because we have seen him do a version of this for 30 episodes, or how many episodes they've done, 24 episodes, it just doesn't have the same magic anymore. And that's why I say, like, the TV show ruined this movie.
Got it.
And so even though we know, in the Nerdverse, we know that this movie is the 4th season script that never got made. It's basically like a stripped down version of the season they intended to make. It's not that bad. It's just contaminated. And I think, to me, that's, for whatever reason, for me, it's just sort of made me like really rethink and be like, okay, realistically, what could you actually do with Star Wars, Marvel, DC, all this stuff that's going on to somehow protect the magic of the big screen and actually utilize the small screen to your advantage? And like what I arrived at, and I'm sure we'll talk about it here, is something that's borderline impossible. So I just think, like, at the end of the day,
Star Wars,
for everything, I think it's like the solution that I came up with is not one that I could ever see being implemented. But it's one of those things where, like, you see a lot of headlines debating, like, was this movie successful box office wise? And it's like, well, technically it looks like it's going to make money because the budget was lower, but the box office is lower than Solo. And I kind of liken it to, like, when we were growing up and we had 7 channels of TV, and you look at the ratings of what big shows in the 80s used to draw, right? Versus what a top show on TV draws today.
Yeah.
It's like not even in the same universe of viewership.
Yeah.
But the show today still gets to say it's number 1 in the ratings, even though the viewership is 1/10 of what viewership used to be. I kind of think that's what Star Wars and all these IPs have become. It's just like happiness is a function of your expectation. And the Infinity Saga and historical Star Wars took expectations to a level that, given the landscape we have now, are not attainable ever again. And so you just have to be content with, okay, Mando Grogu is going to be budgeted at $160 million and is going to make like 400 or 500. That's a good result for Star Wars now. That is the new standard for what a reasonably successful Star Wars property looks like. It is not New Hope, Force Awakens, or Phantom Menace. It's not. Because the brand has been diluted, contaminated, and in Star Wars' case, we'll get into it, has all sorts of other internal conflicts to where the old heights right now are not attainable. I don't believe.
Not
even Dawn of the Jedi, I don't think would have gotten to like Empire Strikes Back levels. I think that would have been the best chance of the projects we'd heard about, but I do not think you would have had people. I don't think it would have grabbed the zeitgeist the way that New Hope did.
Dawn of Justice to me would have been similar to how Chadwick T'Challa explained it to Scarlett Johansson. It would have been a stepping off point.
Stepping off point. Death is not the end. Well, that's what they better hope it's not for Star Wars is not the end. But anyway,
that's what Dawn of Justice would have been, and they chose not to go that route. But this route ain't good either.
Well, they chose not to go that route, I think, very deliberately, and you think very deliberately, and we agree. And we'll get to Dave Filoni, because I'm out on him too. Out.
I've been out.
I know, but this project officially made me out. And you know why it officially made me out. Because my least favorite moment in this movie was that he put himself in it twice. And I was like, there's only one Stan Lee. And his contributions to the annals of Marvel are one thing. You?
Doesn't deserve that visibility.
No. And the fact that he did it twice, he doubled down on it. I was like, circle that, folks, because it tells you something about the person involved, I think.
Yeah.
So I think under his stewardship, this IP is going nowhere.
We've always talked about what if this is a failure as far as attempting to bring back Star Wars, where you say it is an impossible feat at this point.
Yeah.
Especially in the direction that it's going, and especially because of the person who's in charge of it.
I shouldn't say the IP will go nowhere. That's not fair. Okay. It will not expand its horizons to levels that make it special again. I think it will stay. I think we know what his bag is, and I think it's going to feel small. But when I say small, though, I think Dave Filoni's, you could argue his greatest strength is also his greatest weakness. As George Lucas's protege, he is so deep in the lore that he is obsessed, and his personal interest is in many ways with these little characters, many of whom he brought to life in animated form. And he thinks the thing everyone wants to see is the Rot of the Hutts and the Embos translated into live action, no matter how they're done.
Yeah.
And I don't think either of those characters works in this movie, but I know that there's some diehard Star Wars fans who are like, look, I've waited so long to see those characters in live action. And I think Dave Filoni lives to service that. And to me, that's small. Yeah. That's not going to expand the audience to the places that Star Wars would need to go. Mm-hmm. And that's why I say voting down Dawn of the Jedi is actually a vote to stay small. The further we get from Andor, the more miraculous it's going to look that ever got approved, let alone made. Like that's actually almost like a mistake when you look back on it. It's like, how did that happen? That slipped through somebody's evaluation, didn't get shut down at the gates,
But it produced.
But I don't think that's happening again. That's not happening again. Is definitely not happening under his watch.
No, it's not under his watch because he already stated how he felt about it.
So I just think Star Wars, that's what I say, Star Wars is going to be small. The way it is now, and that's why I say, you budget 150, you make 400, make 450, that's Star Wars. You're just regular. You're not special.
Let's see. They must have a 10-year plan or 20-year plan. I don't know.
He does, actually. I have a quote from Dave Filoni channeling his inner
guys,
Palpatine.
I didn't even say, I didn't even read the article. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, he literally says, he gives an interview to Discussing Film, and he goes, quote, "I'm looking forward to bringing a lot of these ideas and visions to the fans. Everything right now is proceeding as I have foreseen it," end quote. Of course, that's a line that Palpatine uses. That's it. He's telling you that, yes, he's always had a plan, and he has a plan. But I think we've just seen enough of his work to know what the hallmarks of said plan are. And I think those will be governors and limiting factors on what Star Wars could be. And I think Disney's okay with that. Because at the end of the day, to your point of whether it was worth it, way more than worth it. Look at the movies, look at the box office they got out of their projects, look at the eyeballs they got on Disney Plus, and look at what they sell in merchandise and at the amusement park. Not even close, $4 billion, please. They've made that many times over. And if they put it up for sale, they would still get well north of that. Easy.
The only way I see this being, as far as an executive perhaps who doesn't care too much about the lore and, just wants to make money, I'm just thinking from that front. these movies will have to get made cheaper than usual. Would you say?
I think that's going to happen with every IP because, like I said, I think this discussion we're having and we're starting to go down the path of with this whole streaming versus big screen, I think it's true everywhere. I think it like when you backfill like what's happened to Marvel and there's all sorts of stuff, right? But I do think, let's put it this way. What if, here's the thing that I think is damning about streaming and about this Mandalorian movie. If every single episode of The Mandalorian was at the same level as Andor, let's just imagine a world where that's been the case, right? That's the best possible version of that show. 30 episodes of just cracking TV. Everything I said about the movie not feeling special would be the same. That's the thing that's damning about it. Simply because you've seen it before, which means there's no version of that show that makes the movie a $1.5 billion lasting event. And if that's the case, then the issue is streaming itself. It's not actually the character.
But I think if you connect it back to the mystique and the Jedi and the connections, not necessarily to Andor's, I think it's a lot of it is story too. And it's connections to the bigger thing that people who pay dollars, you know what I'm saying, to get that repeat view because it connects to that aspect that people hold dear.
You know, you're not wrong. I guess that's a different wrinkle on this though. Like I would say when you expose audiences to these characters the way that Mando and Grogu have been exposed over the last 6 years, it certainly raises the bar for what becomes good when you take it to big screen. Like okay is no longer fine to get people's attention. You need good, you need great. But I don't think it changes the premise. That's my point is like, I just don't think there's a version of this out there that would ever be even the equivalent of Attack of the Clones in the zeitgeist. I just don't. Like, it just isn't out there with how the landscape is. See, to me, the only way, this is actually, I think this movie is actually more enjoyable than Attack of the Clones, which I think other than Yoda's fight scene, I think is just deplorable. But like, the only path to this that I see is you have to put the IP in the vault for as long as George put it in the vault before he made the next thing. That's the only, you want it to feel special? It needs to be taken away from you for a long time.
And move in the future, move 100 years later, you know.
And reinvent it. That's part two of the equation. That's the Dawn of the Jedi thing of like, what are you afraid of? We know what you're afraid of. You're afraid of change because Last Jedi that's why I say like, okay, let's go to the Force Awakens thing. So if I say like, where did this all go wrong? Force Awakens to me is a seminal moment in this like collapse. Well, I'll say collapse of the IP because Disney remakes New Hope beat for beat.
Like you said before, with Mandalorian, we've seen it already.
But it works because no one has seen Star Wars for 10 years, right? Star Wars has been gone for 10 years. So they remake New Hope, call it Force Awakens. Reviews are awesome. Audience scores are awesome. They break records. They make $2 billion worldwide. It's still the highest grossing movie in North America. And they take all the wrong lessons from it. What does Disney learn from it? We can recycle Star Wars as much as we want, and people are going to eat that up. So what happens next? We're going to do a Star Wars project every year. That was that moment, right? That's where they announced it. And then what follows next is, but we're going to let Rian Johnson do his own thing, not realizing what he's intending to make. He makes Last Jedi. The response is what it is. And Disney retreats even further into, we can only make the same stuff over and over and over again. We can never venture outside it. Hence, Rise of Skywalker is the way it is. And when audiences reject Solo, Disney's like, I don't get it. People couldn't get enough of Star Wars. What happened? Well, we'll just give them more of the same old Star Wars. And it's not the quantity that's the issue. It's what we're giving them. Like,
let me ask you this.
Yeah. So I think that combination that leads to Disney Plus formation, the pressure to put content on there, and I think we are where we are. I think the IP is effectively just, as I said, I think it's contaminated.
There are some who may argue that they should redo the classics. What are your thoughts on that?
You mean remake New Hope?
Yeah, Empire Strikes Back.
Like I said, they already did it, so like they will do it. Why not? But again, you only get to say "Luke, I am your father" once.
Exactly. That's why you don't touch that. You can't touch it.
So good luck. Go ahead. You can go ahead and do that. But like, it's so hollow. Again, I don't know.
Luke, I am your uncle. I'm your third cousin. Hey, you can't redo those, man. But they should definitely go into the future 100 years, and if they wanted to do series on TV like they did with Andor, you can do series on that to fill us in on that missing gap of how this began. If you wanted to go that route, we gotta go 50 years, 100 years, 200. It's not to say it
never, right? Because you see an Andor and you see a penguin and you're like, it is possible. But the reason why I say it's impossible is that all of these streamers and the owners of these streamers need so much content to justify those existence. They'll never show the restraint. So if you said, like, I think you asked this question of like, to me on text, does Disney need to sell the IP? Need? No. Should they? Absolutely. But to who?
Yeah.
That's the question. Because if you go down the list of all the other media conglomerates who could and would line up to buy the Star Wars IP, would they realistically handle it any better or differently? Come on now. Like, we're watching Amazon literally destroy an entire generation of IP. And you know what? It makes me really scared about what they're going to do with Bond, to be quite honest, even though I'm excited about Denis Villeneuve, right? It's like, so you can't
that's the only saving grace right there.
Yeah, but it's like control. Yeah, so I'm like, you go down the list and it's like, who out there could you trust with this IP to actually handle it the way that you want to handle it to make it feel always special? Nobody, I think, is the answer.
I think perhaps Apple may have a chance.
Now, I can't decide what they actually want to do. After F1, I thought they were back in movies. They haven't done anything, so.
Yeah.
But I think it's the same thing. They need content. The problem is they need content. And if you need content, and we all have these nice TVs at home that are much better than they were when we were watching the box growing up, that's a part of it too, right? It's like you can see 4K at home.
Yeah.
And it's like it can be cinematic in your living room. And so the line between that and what you see at the movie theater is not as big as it used to be either. So I would like to see Disney sell it. I think they have gutted it, but I'm not convinced that the grass is greener on the other side.
Yeah. Okay. You're saying that Disney is okay with it. What sort of success does Starfighter need to have in order for them to feel, or that whole camp of Star Wars people, creators, Dave Filoni, to feel confident in their ability to tell great stories and bring in profit, bring in revenue? You're saying that they can't reach those heights again of 2 billion or 1 billion even. Perhaps what these execs is what they expect with this.
I don't think they expected it with Mando. That's why I take umbrage with some of these reports that are really fixating on like the absolute level of dollars being lower, because I'm like, the budget, it's the same as the Supergirl argument, right? It's like Supergirl, Mando, these are being budgeted with the idea that if they make 400, that's okay. You can see it, right? Like if you're handing a project $100 to $160 million a budget, you're basically saying with marketing, I need 400, I need 350, I need 425. Like that's, you're not saying you need $1 billion. So I think when you factor in merchandise sales that are likely to come off this, maybe they can reinvent a Mando Grogu ride at one of their parks, like sell some T-shirts. Disney's fine on this movie. And by the way, you're going to watch it when it goes to Disney Plus. There's probably somebody out there who doesn't have Disney Plus has kids who's going to subscribe to watch it. Disney will be fine on this project. All of us who are out there clamoring, fine is not Star Wars. That's what we're saying. Star Wars redefined movie making. That's the standard. And Disney's saying, we don't care about that standard.
Yeah.
And us as fans are longing for that nostalgia of like, we long for a day when that standard was cared about.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what I'm saying is impossible in the current landscape. It's like, to me, it's like if you wanted to give the best chance for Disney continuing to own Star Wars and actually make it work, it would be I would shut down all the live action TV shows. I would shut them all down. Where's was it C-3PO to R2? Shut them all down when they're on the Death Star. And basically be like, Dave Filoni, you're good at animated. Make animated stuff on Disney Plus. That's it.
And do dope stuff in animated form.
Yeah. And wait. And then that's Disney Plus. Disney Plus is animated Star Wars. And then I would say wait 10 years and relaunch Star Wars in a different time period, in a different part of the galaxy. And like, here's my thing to the hardcore fans, because Star Wars is at war with itself, right? Because there's a segment of fans that won't accept that, right? That can't grow beyond that. They hate Andor because Andor actually like takes them to new places, makes them uncomfortable, right? To them, I would say if I was Disney, I would treat them like the hardcore elements of a political party. I dare you to vote for somebody else because I'm going to make something better. Go ahead. If you really can look away from this IP that you love because I'm making it different and making it new and challenging what it used to be, take your dollars somewhere else. I challenge you. I bet you they don't. I bet you they still watch it. They may gripe about it, but ultimately over time, guess what? They're probably going to be all right with it. Because look what's happened to some of the prequels. People felt so betrayed by Lucas, by some of these movies, right? When they came out, 20 years later, Revenge of the Sith being held up like a classic because it's not bad, it's good, right? But in the moment, people were like,
"It's amazing."
People were like, Hayden Christensen is like, public enemy number one. That what happened. Now he gets up on stage and he gets standing ovations.
Everybody should change.
So that's how I would treat the diehards. Look at what's already. I know I have you. If I make good stories in the Star Wars universe, even if they're new and you're not used to them, you will come around. But I need to grow my audience. And by the way, George Lucas would be the first person, I believe, to approve that. Because his biggest complaint with episodes 7, 8, and 9 was that they were not new enough.
That's exactly right, though. That's exactly right.
He said Star Wars had to keep changing. Star Wars had to stay new. And he did not like 7, 8, and 9 because they were remaking the old stuff.
Again, we'll see how the young generation connects with it to determine a path forward. But I think what Star Wars also has done, the classics anyway, again, it's not just for kids. It's a family-friendly film. You watch that with your family.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm not enjoying...
does that. This movie is very heavy on creatures. This movie has some very good action. There's some action I think gets tedious, again, because of the TV show. But there's some very good like cowboy gunslinging, shoot 'em up action. There's some good creature action. There's actually like a kind of an aerial bombing fight scene at the end, which is pretty good Star Wars. It's like, again, if you hadn't seen any of the TV show, you'd be like, this is something valid in the catalog. But I just think because if you've seen the show, you've seen versions of these scenes already multiple times. You've seen the creatures, seen the crate dragon. You've just seen these things where you're like, it's just not. And the thing is, we did a rewatch in our house leading up to the movie. So it was like very fresh in my mind, like the different kinds of scenes they had done. And I was like, yeah, you're just kind of redoing a lot of the same tricks.
Yeah.
I think this whole discussion extends to Marvel. I think it extends to DC. They're all having the same issue, right? They're all having the same issue. The streamers and the content that went on the streamers clearly diluted the brand of what was on the big screen to where it's one of those things where, yes, we've gotten flawed product, like Marvel movies. There's been a number of bad Marvel movies. Yeah. But even if I flipped the switch and made them all Winter Soldier level Marvel movies, I still think people would have fatigue. And I still think there would be a sense of frustration. But I think that frustration would actually come from like, well, I'm watching the same stuff at home on these like 5 or 6 different like average TV shows.
But here's the thing. Do you find there being a lot of risk as far as this? Because there is this notion about the possibilities of multiple content for X-Men. I don't know if they're going series or movies. So do you think there's a lot of risk there?
Yes.
For this to happen to the same thing? Okay.
Yes. Like it made me basically like, we are seeing reduction in content right now is being defined as we are shrinking from 4 movies a year and 3 TV shows a year to 2 movies a year and 1 to 2 TV shows a year. And I'm here to say that's not nearly dramatic enough. So if you said to me, like, you're going to hand us all the money in the world to buy these IPs.
I'm going to make them an offer they can't refuse.
Offers they can't refuse to these studios. I will tell you right now, the first thing I'm going to do with all the IPs is I'm going to lock them in a vault, and we're not going to make a project on any of them for X amount of time. We're going to flush the system. We're going to make people starve for all of this content before we give them anything. And that's what I say. That's impossible, right? No studio is going to sit there owning Star Wars, Marvel, or DC and be like, we're going to make nothing for 5 years. But I actually think that's a necessary cleanse.
Yeah.
For all of this.
I mean, you still could do Bionic 6. You still could do the $6 trillion man.
Go make totally different other stuff. But these IPs need to sit on the shelf until people genuinely miss them.
Yeah.
And then you have to have the quality control when you bring it back.
You can still do Tango and Cash. You can still do Big Trouble in Little China. These other films.
Disney and Marvel's version of what I said about Force Awakens was the Infinity Saga, right? They fell into the trap of their own genius. They saw this propulsive momentum of this one saga that everyone couldn't get enough of. And we're like, hey, we're putting out 2 to 3 movies a year and we're making billions every time we do it. Not realizing that was the pioneering moment. They were breaking ground every time they did that. And once they did it, they could never do it again. And they looked at it as like the same way that Kathy Kennedy and Bob Iger looked at Force Awakens when they were like, oh, people just want more and more Star Wars. They can't get enough Star Wars. Disney did the same thing with Marvel. Infinity Saga means people can't get enough of Marvel. So when we get done with COVID, we're going to just hit them with Marvel, Marvel, Marvel. And that banner alone is going to be billions. And the audience was like, no, we were there for one ride, one special magical ride that redefined blockbuster movie making. That will not happen again for a generation.
Wow.
And the only way it's going to happen again is if you shut it all down for a while.
It forces you to be creative.
It actually makes me appreciate Matt Reeves' approach, right? Because the same thing that makes him a little frustrating actually winds up working to his advantage because he makes you wait.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I say, like, if you look at the timeline of how his universe is going to wind up playing out, he's like at the line of like, okay, he gave you a movie in 2022. He gave you a show that was at that level of quality in 2025. He's going to give you a second movie in 2027. And we're probably going to have to wait another 5 to 7 years to get one more show and one more movie. And it's like, we're begging for it every time we see it. And it's like, you wonder, he compressed all that. And he's like, I'm making Batman 1, 2, and 3 in 3 consecutive years. I'm going to have 3 Batman shows every year. As much as Batman is cool, I'm guessing we feel a little bit of like, all right, there's a lot of this going on right now.
Yeah.
You know? So that's what I mean. It's like, I just think patience, right? The James Cameron approach. Patience actually is a virtue sometimes. Yeah. Well, look at Cameron too, right? Like Cameron made us wait how long between movies? But when he shrank that, Avatar 2 to Avatar 3, and he didn't go to as much innovation third versus second. Look what happened. Even his audience kind of got a little tired of it.
Yeah. And I read an article about him talking about if we're gonna do 4, 5, and 6 or whatever, we got to find a way to make it cheaply.
Yeah, I think that's the orders from on high. It's like we can't spend that if the box office is $1.5 billion, it doesn't work for us, which is crazy, but that's the truth.
Wow. So. Anything else, Brian? Before we?
No, I would just say, like, look, if people are on the fence about going to see this, I think the kids cast a deciding vote. I think if you have kids, you should go see this on the biggest screen possible because there are moments that your kids are going to be wowed by. That's what I would say. Like, to me, like, when I step back on its merit, I actually think this movie is probably at least a 3-star movie. I think it gets dragged a little more just because of, like I said, all the baggage of the show that we've had. But I don't think Favreau did a really bad job here. I don't. I just wish this had been the very first time I'd seen these two characters together.
Where are you expecting this Mandalorian and Grogu film to sort of settle on at the box office?
I think about where I said. I mean, the opening weekend was $80 million for the 3 days in the U.S., $100 million for the 4-day holiday, $160 worldwide. That's also notable, by the way, that international is well below the U.S. again here. That's, it's interesting to see where the global audience has really gone, right? Like no surprise, Michael's been a big hit overseas. Devil Wears Prada 2, massive hit overseas. That's actually got the biggest non-U.S. versus U.S. split, which I think is fascinating. But Star Wars, following the pattern of like Superman last year, where it's like majority in the U.S., that's a little concerning too. Kind of says it's not resonating globally. But, 160 global open, the next big competition is really He-Man, and that's 2 weeks away. So I kind of think this thing will be solid into the 400, 450. And like I said, I think for the kids, this is going to be like a rewatch one. I'm telling you, like that Grogu scene, what I'm talking about, like Grogu's solo adventure is, if you can imagine your 10-year-old self with not a lot of familiarity with the character, I think that's gold for a kid.
Yeah. Okay.
It really is. It's well done. And it's kind of funny too. Like it actually, again, it's like the humor would have been fresher if he hadn't been doing those tricks for 30 episodes. But
so is this a 3.5, 3?
I'd have it as a 3 just on its own merits. I think, like I said, like there's a world where it's like 3.5, and I think for younger audiences it's a 4. I think that's kind of like how I would think it would split. Yeah.
I was watching, when they show Star Wars: A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back on TV, I stop,
Of course. That's what I mean about special, though, right? That's special.
Those moments in Empire Strikes Back still hit the same,
And that's why I thought those Nielsen streaming reports were so interesting, right? That the new trilogy wasn't anywhere. And I think you can just trace that to, like, a lot of people are like, well, if I want to watch those beats, I can just watch New Hope. Done better.
Yeah.
Why do I need to watch Force Awakens again?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's something to
that. And what the episode did they get Chewbacca his medal?
Rise of Skywalker.
The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, that
was the third one,
movie,
right?
Yeah, that movie's an atrocity. That's like one of the like biggest disgraces in major IP cinema history.
I need to find a way to make Chewbacca in AI prompted to like take the metal and stomp on it and like, because that was unnecessary for him to get that medal after all these years. You want to give it to me under these circumstances?
But it was what wasn't it one of the quintessential examples of them trying to please everyone in the fandom, and then actually pleasing no one, because they kind of, the way it was done almost cheapened the fact that he hadn't gotten one in the first place. It's like Maz Kanata's like handing it to him in a back room. Like,
oh man, I'm gonna see if I check it out just to see if my youngest will enjoy it. I know my oldest wants to see it.
By the way, that's a random one. She had all the goods if you think about it. Like, she had Chewie's medal. She had Luke's lightsaber. She had all that stuff just stashed downstairs in her establishment. I'm like, man, she's the real bounty hunter.
So yeah, let us know in the comment section below if you guys saw Mando and Grogu and what do you think about it. Do you feel similarly to what Brian felt when he saw it, as just a well executed long episode in the movie theaters that just didn't bring out the excitement that you used to, or for those who remember that excitement in the movie theaters, seeing Star Wars Empire Strike Back, or just that special adjective attached to it. Was it special? Let us know in the comment section below what you guys thought. And yeah, remember, if you haven't heard it anywhere else, you heard it here first on the Nerd Gen Report.
Let me throw one postscript, which I forgot. There's one thing I think about the movie that is special, and I think we got a show which will be sort of in this vein at some point coming up. I think the score is special.
Okay.
So Ludwig Göransson, who did the theme to the TV show, does the score. He does the thing I wish Star Wars would do, which is he built something for this movie that at times pays homage to John Williams' orchestra, and at times goes very synthesizer, very electronic, and very original, and it works. And I was like, there's one guy in this production who has it, who knows what to do with this, which is, I respect the original, but I expand the horizons. I think he's clearly like the next genius of this, of this trade. And I think he does it again in this movie. And there's definitely scenes where I was like, that's cool. Like, that's a very cool, different sound in Star Wars that really works.
Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely have to go check it out now and see how...
So listen to it on your Spotify if you don't go see the movie. But
I'm going to definitely check it out. But yeah, let us know in the comments. Oh yeah, I already ended it. I'll just plug that in an earlier sequence. All right.